Today we're gonna dive into how to create an aesthetic Instagram feed and basically my top hacks and the things that I'm thinking through when I am planning out my own Instagram feed for it to kind of have the same feel and for it to flow. And this video is brought to you by my own mobile presets that are launching literally this week. The link is down below in the description. And if you want to check them out, I highly recommend it, especially if you like a more light and airy style. But let's jump into the video. So when I was thinking about this topic, thinking about how to create an aesthetic Instagram feed, the first thing that popped into my mind is thinking about your colors. What are the main colors that you want your Instagram feed to have? And this can really go back to maybe you already have an existing business or an existing brand. What are your colors for your business or your brand? For example, for my existing business and my brand has had a lot of whites and neutrals, has a pop of yellow, pop of like a blush pink, and more of like a burnt orange. So that color palette is really what I've used to help, not only guide all of the different things that I am doing my brand visually, but it also relates to what I'm going to post on my Instagram feed. And when you're thinking about your colors, you want to make sure that you're thinking about the color tones in each photo and how they line up with your brand in general. I feel like that sounded really vague, so let me break it down a little bit more. So basically what I mean is think about the different things that are in your brand already. What are the main colors in your brand? You want to make sure that you're choosing photos that align with that. You have an editing style that kind of aligns with that, which is something we'll talk about more here in a second. And a really simple question that you can ask yourself to help you figure out what this might be if you don't have an existing brand or a business is think about what are the things that you're drawn to. Maybe even start a Pinterest inspiration board. I personally love using Pinterest to almost like gather my thoughts visually on something and to create different boards for either like projects I'm working on or even things like this when it comes to my brand. And I'm able to pin different things to that board and then go back and see what are the things that I'm drawn to. Am I drawn to more things that are light and bright? Am I drawn to more things that are moody? Am I drawn to a certain aesthetic? And once I figure out what that aesthetic is, it makes it a lot easier to go through the photos that I take or to be strategic with the photos that I'm taking so that it matches up with that aesthetic really well. And when you're going through, maybe if you did do this and you pin some pins to a Pinterest board, when you're going through and thinking about what maybe you like, pay attention to like what are the overall feel of the photo. What's the overall feel of the photo? What are the different colors that are typically in that photo? Are you drawn to more earthy colors? Are you drawn to more bright and bold colors? Are you drawn to neutrals? Are you drawn to pastels? Think about that and what the specific colors are that you are drawn to, what you might want to create and curate your Instagram feed around. Another quick tip here is you can also think about what are the accounts that you follow on Instagram and that you are really inspired by. And the key here is to be inspired. Do not copy. One of the biggest things that I can tell you when it comes to growing on Instagram, to having a personal brand, is making sure that you are having literally a brand that is unique to you and you're not trying to emulate someone else's brand. But it can be a really cool thing to, draw inspiration from the people that you follow and the people that you are inspired by. It can really help to give you a hint into what are the things that you like, what are the things that you like in other people's aesthetic or their Instagram feed and what you might want to go for in your own feed. And that really leads me into the second thing I wanted to make sure that I touched on in this video is to make sure you shoot and edit your photos in the same way. And I want to reiterate, shoot and edit. It doesn't matter, in my opinion, if you are using the same preset on every single photo, if you have photos that are taken a wide variety of places and you don't have some consistency to the colors that are in the photo. So going back to what we were talking about, having a certain color palette or certain colors that you are drawn to and incorporating that in your feed, you want to make sure that a lot of the images that you're choosing to post on your Instagram align with that. Because if they don't align with that initially, it's not going to match the aesthetic or the brand that you are going for. For example, for my brand and my style, it's very light and airy is one phrase that I like to use to describe my brands. And if I were to take a photo like in front of a really, really dark black wall, it's probably not going to go with the Light and Airy style very well. Versus if I find a really neutral, like light white wall, that's going to match my brand and my overall Instagram feed a lot better. Or, you know, for example, my colors, one of my colors is blush pink. So wearing something blush pink versus maybe a bright green is going to match my brand a little bit better than if I am choosing to wear colors that are maybe not going to match my brand as well. Or just for a couple more examples of this, so maybe you want a brand that is very, very neutral and you want a lot of neutrals in your brand. You want to make sure that you're gravitating towards outfits, locations that really give to that aesthetic really well. So for example, if you want a brand that's super neutral, has lots of whites, you probably don't want to shoot in front of a bright yellow wall. It's just not going to make sense for your brand. Or you don't want to wear like a really, really dark, bright navy blue color or maybe a burnt orange color. That's just like not going to go with the overall aesthetic of a simply really, really neutral brand. Or maybe on the flip side of that, maybe you want a brand that is very moody, has a lot of like rich tones and earthy tones and warm burnt oranges. You're going to want to gravitate towards locations that have those colors in them or outfits that have those colors in them when you're planning out photos and planning out the aesthetic of your Instagram feed. So I just wanted to make sure I touched on that before we get into the editing part, because that yes, the editing really does matter. You want to make sure you're editing with the same presets or a very similar look every single time. But if you're not doing that initial work up front, you're not thinking through up front, you know, maybe you have bad lighting, or maybe you don't have a great location for your brand, or maybe you have an outfit that doesn't really represent your brand as well. You want to make sure that you're thinking about those things, because if you go back through and you're editing your photos and trying to make them flow with your feed, it's just going to you're gonna have a lot harder time doing that, and you're probably just gonna have to turn the photo black and white to match your feed really well. And lighting, something I didn't even plan to really cover in depth in this video. So if you want more information about lighting and how to have the best lighting, I actually did a full video walkthrough on how I changed my indoor home office that only has one window to create some really beautiful images in my home office for the best lighting tips for indoor lighting and all of that stuff. So if you want to check that out, the link will be down below as well. You can check that video out. So with that said, when it comes to editing your images, the biggest tip I can give here is to use the Lightroom mobile app. And the reason why I say that is because the Lightroom mobile app is a completely free app that you can use to edit your images. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I am launching my own mobile presets literally this week. So if you want to get your hands on them, I'll jump a link down below and you are able to snag them for yourself. But my presets are more of a light and airy style, and they definitely lend to people who want more of a light and bright style. So if that's something that you want, my presets are going to be a great fit. But with that said, if you don't want that style, if you don't want that vibe, that's totally okay. And there are so many other presets out there, or you can even play around in Lightroom and like create your own presets and create your own way of editing. You don't have to use a preset, even though that can be a really great way to see how other people are doing it and then tweak from there for your own style. So if someone has a preset that's about 90% of the way there of what you want, how you want your photos to look, grabbing that preset is probably going to be a really good idea for you, because it's going to give you a really good direction of how to adjust your exposure and your coloring and all of those things, especially if you're someone who's not a photographer or not super familiar with Lightroom. It's going to be really, really helpful for you. A really cool feature that is actually within Lightroom that I personally really, really love is called color grading. And this is where if you know how there's some Instagram feeds that have almost like a color on top of them, if that makes sense. Like they have a very, very strong color feed where there's one color that's very prevalent in a lot of their photos. There's a tool called color grading that actually allows you to do that. I personally don't do this very much in my images. I prefer more of a clean, natural look. But if you are someone who wants your images to have almost this colored overlay, you can use something called color grading. And I recommend going to the highlight section of color grading, and you can play around with the hue and the saturation to add almost like a colored look to your images. If that's something you want to go for, that can be a really good option as well. All right, and then the third thing that I really wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive in on this video is planning out your feed, because when it comes to talking about having a curated Instagram feed or some sort of Instagram aesthetic to your feed, planning it out in advance is going to be your best friend. Even if it's just 1 or 2 images at a time, just to see how it's going to flow in your feed can be really helpful to see this visually, especially when I was first starting on Instagram. It was really hard for me to visualize how things are going to look in my feed. It's a little bit easier, I think, for me nowadays, but I still do plan out my feed, usually a week or 2 in advance. So it's still like super helpful to be able to have something where you can see exactly how this is going to look before you actually post your images. And the app that I use to plan out my Instagram feed is called Later. I've talked about Later a lot on my YouTube channel, so there's actually a full Later app tutorial. We'll link down below if you want to check that out after this video. But it is literally one of my favorite apps because you can plan out like what time you want to post something. It will notify you when you want to post it. And the best part about it is it will show you how your feed is going to look based on the order of your scheduled posts and the times that are being posted. So how they're going to look in your feed if you were to post those images at the exact times that you said you would, in the exact order you said you would, which is super cool. Like, that's so helpful. You know, once you've shot your images, once you've edited your images, just to be able to see exactly how they're going to look in your feed, and you're not trying to wonder what it's actually going to look like once you post it, and then maybe it doesn't flow as well as you thought it would, and all of that stuff. So you can just save yourself all of that hassle and have an app like Later that allows you to see exactly how it's going to look when you actually post your Instagram posts. And when it comes to actually planning out my feed, there's a few things that I'm keeping in mind, but the overall rule that I think about is trying to make my feed flow and not have it be perfect. I go for generally having it feel balanced and making it feel like it's flowing as people scroll through my Instagram feed. But at this point, I think people are over having a very perfectly curated Instagram feed. I think what's going to do better for you is having posts that are genuinely going to perform really well on your account, that it's things that your followers actually want to see from you versus trying to have it be absolutely perfect every single time. And so there are a couple rules though that I try to keep in mind. So the first one is I try to alternate between a photo that has lots of whites in it and has some color in it. And the reason that I do this, like I mentioned, my brand has a lot of, it's very light and airy and has lots of like whites and neutrals, but then also has some colors like with pastels, like blush pink and a yellow and a burnt orange. So what I try to do is I try to balance it out between those two things by alternating, having some photos or posts that have lots of whites in them, lots of neutrals in them, versus photos that might have a little bit more color, like maybe they were taken in front of a colorful wall or some greenery or something like that. So my goal is to try to alternate between those two things. Another thing that I'm keeping in mind, I try to alternate the photos that I am planning out between photos that are maybe more up close images of myself versus far away images of myself. So if I can help it, I try to avoid posting maybe 3 images in a row that are up close photos of myself versus, you know, maybe having a photo that is up close of myself, and then the next photo is a photo that's a little bit more pulled back of myself, and then the next photo is another one that's up close again, or maybe it's an up close of me and my husband or something like that. So I try to alternate between those things a little bit too, so that it's not just like all up close images of me all the time, or it's not just all like really far away pulled out images of myself, but that there's a really good mix going into it. So by alternating between, you know, between the different colors of my brand and alternating between the composition of the photo, so whether the photo is super up close or far away, I feel like those two general rules of thumb serves me really well in having a feed that I feel like just flows a little bit better. So on the screen right now is an example of an Instagram feed that, while it looks really pretty, to me it does not feel as balanced as opposed to something like this that feels a little bit more balanced, because I'm alternating a little bit more between photos that are up close of myself, alternating the whites in photos versus the more colorful photos. And this is something that I would go for versus something like the first image that I showed you, where maybe my Instagram feed didn't feel as balanced because I wasn't using those 2 rules of thumb. And those are just 2 rules of thumb that have worked really well for me. You can always come up with your own things that can help you to make your feed flow a little bit more, but those are just some things that have helped me a lot in making sure that my personal Instagram feed flows really well. All right, you guys, so that is it for this video. Let me know if you have any other questions about having an aesthetic curated Instagram feed. I would love to dive deep into some other things in the future in some other YouTube videos. And if you just have any other questions about Instagram or growing online with social media and content creation, let me know. I am always looking for new video ideas, and this is where I get a lot of my ideas, is when you guys are asking for certain videos. So I would absolutely love to know what else you guys would like to hear from me in the future, and I cannot wait to share more with you guys in the next video at noon Eastern Standard Time. So if you're not subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button because it would mean the world to me, and I'll see you guys then. Bye guys! Oh my gosh, Bubba, you're getting so big. Where's the camera? Look, hi, Flooper. He wanted to say hi. Say hello, Bubba. He's such a sweet boy. He is so cuddly. So much more cuddly than Ember. We still love Ember, but you are a cuddle bug. He's just soaking this up right now. It's so precious. I think you're sleepy and need a nap. How about you? You think you're sleepy and you need a nap? He's such a cutie. All right, Bubba. We'll take a nap, okay?